Hey Bookaholics, so welcome back to another reading vlog. In today's reading vlog, we are starting my friend take over my TBR. This is round 5, and in today's one, we are of course dealing with whatever Lady Mair Reads decides to throw at me, because of course we are. Why would I not trust Mair with my TBR? She's not insane. We're doing a two-parter. Again, I have done this in the past. I've done this both with Elise and with Esme, I think, are the two that I've done it with. But we are doing a two-parter. The second part is going to be an entire series reading vlog. But today's one, we're dealing with 3 other books. And if you watch my TBR, you'll know what they are. Cry Voidbringer by Elaine Ho. This is the story of a young woman who is part of this army that she's been indoctrinated into. And in this world, there are children that are born with like magic gifts. Think mutants from X-Men, I believe. And there is this little girl that she's kind of put in charge of for some reason, who initially seems to have not been much interest, and children whose powers are of not much interest tend to be executed. However, then it is discovered that this girl's powers seem to be really, really important ones, and it's how she's going to get thrust into this society and how our protagonist becomes protective of this child, I believe. I've heard that this is quite a miserable one as well, so thanks, Mair. It was one that I was eyeing up, so I'm really glad to be picking this one up. It does sound amazing, and I'm hoping to solve. The next one that we have is the one I'm most hesitant about for this vlog, and that is The Last Binding by R.R. Verdi, and this one is very often comped to The Name of the Wind. I am not a fan of The Name of the Wind, so we'll see how I'm feeling with this one. But in this story, we are following a man who is a storyteller. He enters into a tavern where he is not really well known, and he begins to tell the story of this hero, and he wants to tell the whole truth of this hero, and then it turns out this hero is him. Name of the Wind, right? Like, the synopsis sounds the same as The Name of the Wind. Now, given that I don't like The Name of the Wind, there is the chance that this will redeem that entire setup for me, or it will confirm that it's not a setup that works for me. Either or, we shall see. This is Indian inspired, I believe, and it is the first book in the Tales of Tremaine series. And yeah, it's a chunky one. I have been searching desperately for a fantasy to really sink my teeth into at the minute. I had a mixed time of that in January. My wrap up for January should already be up, so I'll leave that linked and you can see how horrifying January was for me. So hopefully this one will pull through and actually do what I need it to do. And then the last one that I have is Dance of Shadows by Rogba Payne. This is the first book in a trilogy, and I believe it's concluding this year, so I don't have to murder Mair on this one, unlike with the first binding where who knows when the next book will come out. This is the story of Rumi, who is a man who is part of a colonized people, and he has been working his way up through the golden rooms as a musician so that he can earn his family's freedom. So when his big performance is about to happen that will earn him enough money to buy his family's freedom, they are attacked, and then his mother calls down a god to save him, and he now becomes what is known as a shadow wielder, and I believe that it's anti-colonial in nature, which is one of my favorite things to read about, and reading it from the perspective of the colonized peoples is always something that I love reading, so hopefully this will pull through on those fronts. I've heard amazing things from several people in the discords that I'm in, so hopefully I love it just as much as everyone else does. I have very little reason to believe that I won't. Now, I am actually filming this at the beginning of February. This vlog probably is not coming out until March, so I'm taking my time with it. I am going to, I think, per book do maybe a maximum of like 3 check-ins, so it would be my preconceived ideas and whether or not I think I'll like it, then halfway, and then the ending. I think that that's enough clips to kind of get an idea while still being able to maintain it spoiler-free. I'm going to be starting with Cry Voidbringer. I think this is going to wreck me. I think that I need to be in the right headspace for this, hence why I'm starting it now. I seem to be in a good enough headspace to be able to handle this. I've just gone through a romance binge, so I think that's out my system and I should be okay handling this one. If not, I'll read some romance alongside it to keep me going. But yeah, I am looking forward to seeing how this world is created. I think that I've heard that it's got really interesting world building, and that the interactions between, I believe, Hammer, who is our protagonist, who's the soldier, and Viridian, who is a child that she must protect. I think I'm going to cry, and I am scared, but also catharsis, right? So we'll start with this one, and once I'm halfway, I will let you know how I'm faring. All right, vlog, I'm here to check in because I am now halfway through Cry Voidbringer by Elaine Ho, and I am so scared that this is going to hurt me. Oh my god. We are following Hammer. I think I've already said the synopsis of this, but we're following Hammer mostly, who is a member of the Faceless, which is this group of elite warriors that are basically slaves. They get taken from their homelands as a blood tithe, and then they are forced into becoming these Faceless that are warriors. They're not given a name, and they are condemned to this for life. And we are also following Viri, who is a child who happens to potentially have a god almost in them, have the powers of a god. It's undetermined whether or not these powers will amount to anything at all. So far, we've got a little bit of a found family element going on. We've got Hammer and then another Faceless that's called Reface, and then we've also got Viri. And this little found family thing is so cute, and it's my favorite element of here. However, this is arguably one of the best political fantasies I have read in a long time, because it's pointing out the shortcomings of pretty much any kind of government structure. You've got the society that we're mostly seeing, which is the Ashvin society, and the current queen is a brat. They came into power really young, they're completely unprepared, and they're surrounded by advisors, and then every now and then, just to assert their dominance, they'll go against their advisors to everyone's detriment. It's kind of giving that vibe, that too young but impetuous but wanting to assert themselves but have no idea what they're doing kind of situation. And they are also accompanied by Mair, who used to be a Faceless and has worked her way up into becoming the queen's lover and advisor. But we also see other societies, so they are up against the Tevu, who are this expansionist empire, and then we get some of the colonized peoples from this empire. So you have the Iskanti, who are the ones that most of the Faceless come from as the blood tithe. They are currently being dominated mostly by the Ashvin. And then we also have the Meridians, who are a very scholarly and peaceful people. They are the ones that are kind of accused of not having much of a backbone, because they rationalize everything so much and they want to do everything so morally, that at the minute they are colonized and they have to constantly be paying tithes. In this case, it's not people, it's items to the Tevu. So it's an interesting one, and I'm really liking the way that the politics are playing out in here, and the criticisms that we have of both sides, and how the poor people are basically stuck in a rock and a hard place. Like, what is worse? What is the worst of these places? Because there's nowhere that's good, there's nowhere that's actually going to give a shit about us, and we're all probably going to die for this. So it's a really interesting take. It's quite miserable because there's no hope in here. We have one character who has hope. I love him so much, he is my favorite character in here, but we have one character who has hope, who actually hopes for a better life. Everyone else is just resigned to, this is my lot, this is the shit that I have to deal with, and I'm loving that so much. So yeah, I'm having a fantastic time with it, and again, first half in, and I'm just excited to go continue. Hopefully I can go do that now. We can go chat about it in a bit once I'm finished. Alright guys, the first book for this vlog is done because I have finished Cry Voidbringer. Now, I didn't cry at this book. I thought I would. I genuinely thought I would cry at this book, but it's a miserable book. It's not a sob your heart out. I mean, I know that Mair cried, but I didn't feel like this was a sob your heart out kind of book. It was miserable. It was just depressing. It's like a numbing level of depression. It's relentless hopelessness, and the people who most hope are the people who have to endure the most. And it was really intense. It was a very intense read, and the way that the relationships continue to get more and more and more complicated, and the way the political situation continues to be more and more and more forceful, and the way that people keep becoming more and more corrupt, all of those things I think were just handled so well in here, and I really respect the author for that. So while it may be not a sob my heart out kind of read, I definitely think that it was so well executed in the way it was conveying this deep-seated sorrow that comes with misery, and like a numbing level of depression almost that you can get from this. So maybe not one that I would recommend that you read if you are in a not great place, especially with everything that's going on in the world at the minute. This level of misery is probably not ideal, but if you are also wanting a bit of catharsis in that, and an outlet for that rage and that frustration, then this could definitely be a good one for that. So do with that what you will, but I had a really good time. Good time reading it sounds weird. I really appreciated this book. So that does mean that I'll go pick another read. I won't right now because I am going away. So when I come back, the next clip will be me kind of checking in with initial thoughts about whichever of the two books I pick up. Alright vlog, I'm here to check in because I have in fact started the first binding by R.R. Verdi, and this one I am now 108 pages in, so not very far, I've only just started it, but it is very Name of the Wind so far. I understand the comparisons. We are following Ari, who is a young man who, according to the back, killed a god and stole magic, and he is someone who is now trying to tell his story. At the moment, obviously, even 100 pages in, it's a very lyrical, very slow writing style, so we haven't had a huge amount of like the main plot happen. Yeah, we're very much still in introduction territory. We have seen some characters come in and I'm very interested to continue. I think the writing style is working more for me in this one than it did in Name of the Wind. While I did actually like the writing style of Name of the Wind, I didn't like the plot, but I did like the writing style. I think that this one, it just has encouragement, more wanting me to read. I don't know if that is just because it's a stronger plot that's accompanying this story so far, but I'm a lot more invested than I was in Name of the Wind. I can completely see the comparisons though, because we do have a bard who is telling his story, who is also someone who has done like these great things and is also kind of reviled for them at the same time. So I'm gonna see a little bit more, I guess once I get halfway, I'll maybe be able to give you a few more thoughts on how I'm feeling about it. But I think as a first glance, as the initial foreplay into the book, I am enjoying it. I'm more than excited to continue. And I kind of wanted to do this check-in so that I can then have a bit of time to go read. So that's always a good thing when I'm like, okay, quickly get this check-in over and done with so that I can get back to the book. You know, that's always a good sign. So I'm excited to do that. So good start. Hopefully it will get all the better as I continue. However, this is an unfinished series. So then if I get into this and then he pulls a Rothfuss on me, if he's genuinely trying to follow in every single one of Rothfuss's flipping footsteps, I'm going to murder someone. I'm just saying. Putting it out there now. Hey look, I'm checking in because I am now halfway through the first binding, so I thought I would give some thoughts. This one's a difficult one to give thoughts on because the pacing is quite interesting. Like there seems to be sections where it's not that not much is happening, it's that there's nothing hugely cataclysmic that I could say, oh, and this thing happened. And then sometimes there is, but this is such an interestingly paced book because it just kind of carries you along gently. It's not thrusting you into the action, and at no point are there lulls. It's got a really good, nice, consistent pace to it. We did take a little while to get into the past timeline. This is like the Name of the Wind, it's told in two timelines. We have it where our bard is telling his story to, okay, how am I pronouncing names? Okay, Aloin. I've not said these names out loud before. So he's talking to this woman, he's telling her his life story. First off, everyone comparing this to Name of the Wind. Yes, completely, totally. I really like that he is telling his story to a woman. I know that sounds ridiculous. Men telling their life story and their tales of woe and their tales of grandeur is something most women have endured, right? And I genuinely use the word endured. Now, granted, in modern times, it is normally just a guy being like, you know, so like, I work my ass off to the point where I am super exploitable, but it makes me loads of money. I have no time for friends, family, or hobbies. But I have a nice car. Don't you want to date me? Sure, babe. Okay. That's fine. Go find some emotional maturity and get back to me. With this one, because we're talking to a woman, it means that then the responses she's going to give, the questions she's going to ask are feeling different to what a man would be asking, like in Name of the Wind. And this isn't like a, because Name of the Wind is sexist. Like, it's not that. You know, I'm not a fan of Name of the Wind. I'm not saying that this is more inclusive or better or whatever. Adds a different dynamic. So even if this were the same story, those responses would be different, which would then inherently change the framing of the story. Random side tangent, but someone once said the only way that they would find doing a remake of The Princess Bride acceptable is if you got back the actor that played the little boy in the original movie, and now he was telling his story to his daughter, right? So the characters would look different in her head because it's different imaginations, right? Then on top of that, she would interrupt at different parts, she would ask different questions, she would have different responses, right? And that is the only way it would be an acceptable remake. And I agree. I mean, Muppets. But other than that, and I agree, I completely agree that that would be a really interesting framework, especially if you're talking about it from the perspective of a girl. So she'd be asking, like, you know, maybe a modern girl would also be asking, well, why doesn't Buttercup ask more questions? Why doesn't she do more for herself. Interesting questions that girls would be asking about that story. And I would love that. I would genuinely love that remake. And it's the only remake I can think of that I would really like, because yes, it works. Back to this, it's kind of that same vibe of just, even if this is the same story as Name of the Wind, the fact he's telling it to a woman, and the fact that the setting is different and the cultural differences are enough to make it feel entirely on its own worthwhile, because we are taking something that has been done and redone, which, let's be honest, most of fantasy is. If you liked Aragon, or if you now like Ryan Cahill, or if you like Game of Thrones, or if you like Wheel of Time, if you like Tad Williams, if you like any of the classic fantasy, you can name something that came before it that did the same thing. If you like the farm boy trope, guess what? But no one complains about it anywhere near as much as this. No one complains about how we had Tolkien, and then we had Terry Brooks, and we had Raymond E. Feist, and we had Tad Williams, all doing the same thing. And then a decade later, with Christopher Paolini come and be like, let's do this but for kids now instead, again and again and again. Right? And they're great books. Like, I've read a lot of those. I don't dislike them. I've read Shannara, the first Shannara trilogy, the Rift War saga, the original trilogy. I've read the Memory, Sorrow and Thorn trilogy, kind of a quartet in the UK because last one's split in two. I've read the Aragon series. I've read all of those. I love Lord of the Rings. I love all of those. Now, yes, every now and then you'll get someone that's a bit like, oh, it's just a rehash of something we've already seen. But for the most part, it doesn't receive much backlash. This one, I'm just saying, I'm just wondering why this one got more criticism. At least this guy might finish the series, you know? And you can't say it's like, oh, but you know, it's too recent. It's like, no, it's fucking not. It's recent in your brain because you are still hoping the last book's gonna come out in our lifetimes. It's not that recent. It's been a decade, which is more. It's more than a decade. And that's more of a distance than there is between, for example, Memory, Sorrow and Thorn and Aragon. I'm just saying, you know, apropos of nothing. I'm really liking the way this is framed. I'm really liking the way this story is being told. I like Ari's voice. I think he's doing a really good job of being someone who you can tell has that twinge of both bias and regret in their voice. So it's both like, you know, oh, I did this. And like, let's be honest, it was a good thing to do at the time. But also that little bit like, I think. Right, I hope. It's so subtle. It's so subtle in the way it's done, but you can tell the same way as anyone who is telling an immense story about their past. There is that emotion in the way the story is being told that I think is being put through here in a really interesting way. It feels very human in the way that we are being informed of Ari's choices, of why he made the decisions that he was making, why he acted in a certain way. And obviously with our character having the benefit of hindsight as well. And he's trying almost to not spoil the story for you too. So he's not doing that, and I should have known better, but there's just this element in the way it's being told. You can kind of still sense where things might have gone awry in a way. And I just think it's really well told. So is this my favorite narrative style? No, not really. I'm not much of a nested narrative person. It's really well done, and I am really enjoying the way it's being told. So I will go, I guess I'll just finish that one up now, and then when I'm done with it, I will come back and let you know my thoughts on it. That seems like a much more sensible choice. So that's what we're gonna do. All right, vlog. I'm here because I have finished the first binding by R.R. Verdi, and I thought I would check in. This is one that I personally did really enjoy. I completely see why the comparisons and potential, also people saying they're basically the same as The Name of the Wind, where they come from. Like I said, I think that the changes that are made in here, for better or for worse, at least alter the conversation the book is trying to have with the reader. I think the author does a really good job of presenting the framework as 3-tiered instead of 2-tiered. In The Name of the Wind, you have the more current timeline, the later timeline in which we have our protagonist is telling the story, and then we have the past timeline of the story being told. In this one, we have it almost as though the author is telling us about the character in the later timeline, who in turn is telling their story of the past timeline. It means that then the framing means that we can understand where the character's biases will come in, which is something we can then take into consideration when the story is being presented. With The Name of the Wind, you don't really know how much of the story is exaggerated, how much of it is this character trying to make themselves sound as good as possible, the best way they can possibly sound. With the first binding, I definitely found that I had a better understanding of the nuances as to where this character would be framing things in a certain light, why they would be presenting these facts in the specific manner in which they're presented. It's subtle, it's very subtle, but I just felt like this had another level of nuance that meant that the pretentiousness that is still present in here as much as it was in Name of the Wind. I'm not saying this book is less pretentious. The pretentiousness felt more purposeful. It felt less like this is an artistic choice. This is less a way that I can show that I'm a really good writer, that I can do all of this prosaic stuff, and more was presented in the sense of why this character themselves would be pretentious. I also think that the discussions around privilege were very interesting here, because while in the Name of the Wind, I'm sorry I keep doing these comparisons to Name of the Wind, but for everyone that says it's the same, I think that I'm feeling a little bit defensive as to the things that I think were presented differently and why. Our protagonist approaches their right to be in the school differently to in Name of the Wind. In the Name of the Wind, our main character basically acts, well, our character is so good at their skills, they deserve to be amongst the peers because they are better than everyone else. They are better than all of the rich boys who are in there, so they deserve to be there. This one, our protagonist deserves to be there because he is good. He himself is aware he shouldn't have to be better than those around him to deserve his spot where he is. So he is not necessarily the most privileged person in his school, and he is aware of that, and he's aware of that class divide, but it's a criticism of the class divide existing, not the way it gatekeeps, not the way it keeps people. It's not that the loss of talent because of gatekeeping. It's everyone should be deserving the same thing. He shouldn't have to be better. He shouldn't have to do more. He shouldn't have to work harder to be afforded the same privileges as those who are wealthy. And I think that that is presented in here. Again, I just might be reading stuff into it, but those are definitely nuances that I found appeared in here that make a huge difference on the way the story itself is then framed. So this book feels like it's having a conversation with the Name of the Wind, as though it's a modernized and updated version of it. The conversation that started with the Name of the Wind of discussing the way that privilege affects the abilities of those who are brought into the fold who are exceptional. This one is continuing that by saying you shouldn't have to be exceptional to be afforded the same rights as anyone else. I had a great time with this. I really did enjoy the way that this was presented. I definitely found this more readable and had more layers and more nuance to it than I found with Name of the Wind. That might just be a personal preference thing when it comes to the prose style. So it might have been easier for me to read into this one a little bit more. I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to continuing the series. I will be picking up the sequel and hoping and praying that the rest of the books in the series do come out sometime soon. So I will be moving on to A Dance of Shadows by Robert Payne now, and once I've started that and I've gotten a little ways in, just so I can get a feel for the writing style and stuff and a little bit of a feel for the tone and the themes, I'll hop in and give you some brief thoughts on how I'm faring with it. Hey vlog, I am here to check in because I am now on page 182 of The Dance of Shadows by Robert Payne, and I thought I would give some thoughts. So we've kind of not long had what the entire synopsis on the back is, where we are following our character Rumi, who we're actually following multiple perspectives. Our main character is a character named Rumi, who is a musician. His family are from a tribe that are most downtrodden, I suppose, in this country, kingdom that has been colonized. So we have the tier system basically being the colonizers, and then the tribes that were kind of on top at the time, and then those who are kind of most despised, which includes our protagonist's people. So they don't really have very much in the way of rights. Most of them are in incredible debt, which basically puts them in a form of indentured servitude. So our protagonist, using his skills, works his way up to being able to perform in the Golden Rooms, which is where talented people go to perform and they make money. And that includes him eventually being called back so that he can perform at the governor's ball. The governor being the person who is in charge of this colony. So obviously it's a huge honor, and he knows it's going to be lots of money, so he goes so that he can perform. Only then something happens that basically leads to a lot of death, including that of his mother, who basically eventually gives her life to not only protect him, to make him a shadow wielder. His mother clearly had a connection to their old gods, the new gods being that which has been enforced on them by this colonial people. And we're seeing the way that these gods are interacting with each other, the way they hate or team up together, and the way that they see humans. So we're also getting that aspect. We also have been getting the perspective of Alangba, who is kind of like a member of the army who is having to guard another person. We also had a perspective from Rumi's mother, whose name is Adunola. And yeah, we've had a couple of other perspectives as well, mostly to further the plot, and we'll see where they lead. But I have been really loving the prose style in this, fantastic, so digestible, so compulsively readable. 2, the plot in here, very easy to follow, very easy to get into. 3, and most pivotally, the themes. This is, as you would, I suppose, expect from a story that is talking about colonialism, a story that is talking about caste systems. It's incredibly thematically rich. And some of the conversations that are being had are incredible. For a history nerd, one of the conversations that I despise that comes up that is basically a racist dog whistle is that you'll hear people say, sure, the slave trade was bad, but African people were doing it to themselves as well. And it's always used as though it's like, oh, okay then. Oh, well, if they were doing it, it was fine for us to do it. No, and I hate that. And that is addressed in here. And that is a whole conversation that's had about just because we interfered doesn't make it okay because there was already stuff going on. Another thing that you hear a lot is like, well, all of those tribes were all fighting and murdering each other. At least we came in and brought in some stability. 1, no, we fucking didn't. 2, that's not our place. At this time in history where different civilizations are dealing with their own stuff and are trying to figure out their own power dynamics, we didn't come in to help with that. We came in to abuse it. Let's not pretend we came in because we wanted what was best for other nations. We came in to profit off of it. I think that this book is dealing with those topics head on. It's not letting that bullshit go through, slip through the gaps. It's not allowing for us to have those conversations. And I think that was really good because these are conversations that are happening between people of different clans in this book. So it's not even really calling out white people. It's calling out their own people. And then we can glean from that what we deserve to glean from that. And I really, really love that. We also had discussions around colonizing powers, including instilling religions onto people, that the force adjustment and changes to religion, the people who leave behind their own cultures, and the different ways that different people embraced or fought against colonialism, be it big or small. And I really just love the way that all of that is being depicted in here, because it's not, we need to stop acting as though African people had to be good to deserve for us to not colonize and enslave them. Like, no, they're people like anyone else. And I really appreciate the way that this book is doing that. It's just having those conversations in a really at the forefront way, while not being preachy. It's just showing different angles, showing different discussions, and allowing for those conversations to arise naturally within the narrative, which is one of my favorite things in books, is when they have the ability to do that. So I think this is incredibly rich and thematically strong for that, and I'm really enjoying it. The characters carrying the plot are great as well, because we have our male protagonist who is vulnerable. He is someone who has always been guided by the wisdom of his mother, and he is now going to be in a position where he is going to have to find things within himself, make sure that he is the person he is meant to be, and that the strength isn't going to just appear. He's not going to suddenly become a hero. He's not going to suddenly become the roughiest, toughiest guys you ever met. He is a young man who's going to have to figure it out. And I love the way that we're seeing that, and that it's not going to come easy to him. The other supporting characters as well, I think, are great. I loved the mother so much. She was such a fantastic character. And while I can understand that you would technically consider what happens in this book fridging, and I do understand the concerns there, that's not entirely the case in this one for me personally. I didn't find it to be a disrespect to the mother, if that makes sense, which is normally where I draw the line with fridging, is if it's a lack of respect to the female character. So we're going to see how I fare. But yeah, a third of the way in, very excited to continue. So the other night I was presented with the crossroads of, do I continue reading this book that I'm really enjoying, or do I stop, update the vlog, and then continue the next day? And I'm sorry, I love yous, but you lost out, because I just continued reading and ended up finishing The Dance of Shadows. I think this is my favorite one from the vlog. Again, as is emphasized by the fact that my self-control went for the content or for the vibes. And the vibes one. Is this a perfect book? No, it's not. It has a few things to do with our protagonist that we've seen before. There are quite a few things that we see in our heroes in fantasy frequently that are in our protagonist. But, and this is a very key, important but, as soon as you change the social or cultural or racial dynamics of that character, the conversations that come from that are incredibly important and incredibly well done in this book. For a debut, that is amazing. The conversations and the themes of this book are what the driving force was for me, more so than the characters. While I thought the characters were absolutely phenomenal, thematically, the richness of this story is what got me most invested. I think that the plot doesn't necessarily present anything new, but it's not that it's a story not worth telling. I think a lot of this is stuff that we see in fantasy, taking down tyrannical and oppressive regimes, our protagonist who has been thrust into a role that he doesn't feel ready for, all of those things that we have seen, but the adjustment for it to be an anti-colonial narrative instead of an anti-fascist or anti-authoritarian regime is important for the way that brings uniqueness from this story. So I really liked this. I really liked the interpersonal dynamics that we have as well. We've got quite a few POVs in here. We have someone who is basically kind of like a soldier. We have our protagonist, but we see a lot of things happening in this story that I think were presented in a really compelling way. It was a fantastic writing style, and overall, I just think that this is not getting the hype it deserves. Actually, I could say that for all three of these books. They're not getting the hype they deserve, and I'm so glad that Mair has got me to read them. Granted, two of them were on my provisional TBR. This one in the sense of I wanted to binge the series and I was going to wait until the whole series was out. This one was one that I was just going to try. It was going to be a sample one because I know that I don't like Name of the Wind, and with the comparisons, I didn't know if it would work for me. If the issue was the framing and narrative style of Name of the Wind, turns out it's not. This is one I'd heard good things about, but it's such a new release that I probably wouldn't have gotten to it anytime soon if Mair hadn't put this on my TBR. Great vlog all round. I think that for me, this one stood out because it is the one that I felt most connected to in terms of the nostalgia of the overlapping threads it has with a lot of previous works that we've seen in the genre, coupled with the fact that then we have a new setting and a new discussion and a new voice and a new way of presenting that. I think that combination works really well for me at the minute. I would say Cry Voidbringer should be my favorite. It should be the one that would be a 5-star any other time. But with everything being so shit in the real world, a book that feels this helplessly miserable, a book that feels this sad, a book that feels so nihilistic. I just think that it's a me thing. I needed a little bit more escapism than I got from this. So that's not the book's fault. The book's doing exactly what it set out to do. And this book, any other time, would have definitely been an instant 5 stars. I just was left feeling really numb at the end, like a stare at the wall and contemplate everything kind of numb. And I think I would rather have had like a cathartic cry. I really appreciated this book, and in any other circumstances it probably would have been a 5-star and the best from the vlog. This one having that combination of nostalgia that then feels a little bit lighter, even when it's tackling really deep, horrifying things, when it's tackling really intense themes, it felt still like I had more connection to it in the sense of the bits that did feel familiar. And then this one, it's got its 4 stars mostly because it's actually made me realize why I didn't vibe with Name of the Wind and redeemed this narrative style, this nested narrative, someone telling their own story vibe that I sometimes struggle with. I know that I like it in Realm of the Eldlings, but there are very few other occasions where I haven't felt it feels a bit pretentious, and this one was pretentious, but it felt deliberately pretentious, and that worked. So an awesome start to the Mair vlogs. The second one should be coming sometime soon, but we have a full 4-star vlog. No 5 stars, but we do have a full 4-star vlog. All of these are 4 stars. All of these are series I plan on continuing, and all of these are books that I would highly recommend. For all of these, I would desperately check content warnings, and obviously with the world as it is at the minute, reading very strongly anti-colonial books can be both harmful for your mental health if you're not in the mental health space, but can also be very cathartic. So I would recommend checking these out if you're feeling rage at the world right now. These are all very good for I am really freaking angry at the universe right now. All of these books I think work really well for that. And I might do a video at some point about books that tackle anti-colonialism if that's something that you're interested in, especially in fantasy spaces where you can then glean what you want and overlay that onto our world so they don't sound quite so preachy as they would if they were like non-fiction or set in our world. So let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. Fantastic selection from Mair. I had a great time with these books. I would highly recommend that you check them out if they sound like your thing. As I said, the second half of this video is inbound and should be very soon, possibly even the next vlog if I actually get my ass into gear. So I'll leave you with that and I will hopefully catch you in another one soon. Let me know if you've read any of these books and your thoughts on them. Let me know if, based on my liking of these books, you have any other recommendations for me. And that's all from me. Bye.